Are you ready?
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
I was right.
Let's go!
I'm the best.
And here are your hosts, Jessica Town and Rob Landry.
You're a jackass.
Embrace the madness.
What is up, everybody? If it's Thursday night, it is the best time of the week. It is the time that, as we said, this show, when we named it, we never thought it would fit so well for Philadelphia sports, but it does. Welcome into the madness, brought to you by The Painted Lines. Make sure you subscribe to Painted Lines. Hit that button if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure you're commenting along with us tonight. We have a special show. We have a guest coming on, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, let me introduce my co-host, the sleep-deprived but wonderfully talented Jessica Town. Jess, how are you this week?
Sleep deprived.
Sleep-deprived. Well, there you go.
And sad.
And sad.
Sad.
Yeah, it's not great times. And until we get to next week, when the Sixers start playing a couple preseason games and then get into the NBA season, it's going to be sad. Chris is happy we're both in red today. We're like
we match very nicely.
Yes, we're like bulls right now, okay? And we see red because that's what the Eagles front office has done to us. So I guess that's really where we're at here. So we're going to talk about the Eagles and Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz and the Sixers, but we will bring on a guest here in about 10 minutes from 97.5, the Fanatic. One of my favorite guys over there, Tyrone Johnson, is going to join the show with us and talk a little bit. And I know I have some questions for him because he is adamant that the Carson Wentz era of Philadelphia Eagles football is over. And I just want to pick his brain on that because my thought is, I don't think it can be salvaged under this management. But my thought is that Jeffrey Lurie cannot like what he's seeing right now, no matter who his bathroom buddy and Howie Roseman is, that they go to the bathroom together and all that kind of stuff.
I don't know. I don't know about that because I was thinking about it this week and I had a giant epiphany when Sam and I were recording our first episode of Babes on Broad this week. And if you look back on what the Eagles have done, pretty much, I think McNabb is, in the last 20 years, McNabb is your outlier a little bit in what we kind of realized. So, they draft McNabb. And then, before McNabb's time is done, before he is, before he's kind of maxed out his level here, they draft Kevin Cobb, right? So then they bench McNabb and this, that, the other thing, whatever. Then McNabb, did they trade him or did he leave?
They traded him on Easter Sunday to the Washington Redskins.
That is true. It was Easter Sunday. I could not remember for the life of me. So they trade McNabb. Kevin Cobb is your starter. But they signed Michael Vick. Then Kevin Cobb gets hurt. Then Michael Vick comes in. Then Michael Vick gets hurt. And Kevin Cobb comes back in. Then they draft Nick Foles. Nick Foles comes in and plays for a little bit. Vick plays for a little bit. Then they trade Nick Foles for Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford plays. Then they decide to draft Carson Wentz. Sam Bradford's our starter. We traded Carson Wentz. We're going to let him sit for a year. Then they trade Sam Bradford. Then Carson Wentz starts. Then they bring in Nick Foles as a backup quarterback. Nick Foles wins a Super Bowl. They keep him around because Carson's not ready yet. Then they let Nick Foles go. Then they give it to Carson for a year. And then they draft Jalen Hurts. They have such commitment issues when it comes to quarterbacks. All they do is make half-assed decisions and don't go all in. Mm-hmm. I don't care what decision you make at this point. I mean, I have a preference, but I don't care what decision you make. Just make it and commit to it. Go all in with it. You said you were going to go all in. You were going to commit to it when you gave Carson Wentz a contract. But what have you done since then? 33-year-old Deshaun Jackson is your number one receiver 2 years in a row, coming off an injury. Alshon Jeffrey, still here chewing up money for no reason. Greg Ward is an option for you who's been on the practice squad for the last 3 years. Travis Fulgham, who the hell is that guy?
And I want to know what your decision making is, that he's the leading receiver for 5 weeks, and then Alshon comes back, and you just put out like that. If that screams a front office decision because of this, and that's an absolute disgrace to your franchise quarterback, by the way.
And that's my point. So additionally, did they do anything about the offensive line? No. They knew Lane Johnson was banged up. You knew you weren't going to have Brandon Brooks, and Jason Peters is 1,000,001 years old.
And they didn't sign anybody.
They didn't sign anybody. They didn't do anything. All they did was draft a backup quarterback. So all they're doing is actively working against themselves, making half-assed decisions and not fully committing or going all in to the decisions that they make. They just need to commit to something and make the decision and go all in. They haven't done that. And you know what? And who the one consistent factor has been in the last 20 years? There's one. And it's Jeffrey Lurie.
Yeah.
So I don't care. So regardless, there's still some sort of disconnect. There's some sort of issue. And it's a goddamn miracle that they won a Super Bowl 3 years ago, not because they won with a backup quarterback, because there's no organization in the history of sports that actively works so hard to make themselves fail and not do anything to try to succeed. Like, they fell ass backwards into a Super Bowl roster.
Well, you know what? That's a great point. And that's a point that I've been making a lot recently. Like, we wanted to believe that Howie was this genius. And let's face it, the stars aligned. They hit on all these moves. They all panned out for a year. And then this organization believed, oh, that's the way to have a winner. And it's wrong. Signing aging guys to 1-year deals is not the way to build a winner. It worked for you. You know what, though? But the stars align. We talk about it like Carson Wentz going down, as much as it sucked that year, was like this thing that got everybody back engaged, and they got locked in, and they did whatever it was going to take. But right now, it's very clear that year was a flash in the pan. And the new norm is this average football team. And that goes from coaches to general managers to signing the wrong guys, to drafting the wrong guys, and everything. Like, for example, now Chris Coyle puts in here that Dillard injury is a big one. To a certain extent, yes, because you were really counting on him. But here's the problem there. All we heard about before he got hurt was how bad Andre Dillard was looking in practice.
Who he got pancaked by that day.
Yes. But right now, Jess, what I want to do is I want to bring in one of my favorite radio hosts in the city from 97.5 The Fanatic, our friend Tyrone Johnson. Ty, thanks for being on The Madness, man.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
Well, listen, we got a lot to dive into with you. We're going to do the negative, a la the Eagles first, and then we'll talk about the happiness that is the 76ers starting up soon. Right. But right now, we were talking about this when we came on. You're very adamant right now, Ty, that the Carson Wentz era is over, that that the fraction is too big. There's nothing that – just talk a little bit about why you feel there is no fixing this at this point.
Because the Eagles are idiots is the easiest way. Well, the fact that Hurts exists means that the Eagles either one of two things. Either they're really stupid, which is a possibility, or they didn't believe in Carson Wentz. Either one of them puts the Eagles in a really bad spot. It puts the city in a really bad spot. And this all happened, I think, because of the drafting. I think once you draft Hurts, it leads to all these other issues. So, yeah, I think it's over. I think it's over. I think the owner was in on this. I think the GM was in on this, and the coach was in on this. And therefore, if none of them believe in the quarterback, it's over. We could try to act like it's not, but I think it is.
Okay.
So do you see Jalen Hurts as being the answer? Is that the answer that they're going to go with? Are they going to stick with it? Or do you think they're going to do another half commitment to this guy like they sort of did with Carson Wentz and they gave him a contract, they gave him the money, and that was their first half of the commitment. But the rest of it was they didn't put anybody around him. They didn't secure an offensive line that needed to protect him. And to be completely honest, I still don't think that the offense is well enough suited to the strengths that he has as a quarterback. So do you think Jalen Hurts is the answer to that? Or do you think that, do you think the Wentz era is over in the fact that the front office and Howie and Doug are all going to outlast Carson Wentz, or do you think Jalen Hurts is the answer? Like, what do you see that looking like for the Eagles next year?
Oh, for next year, I think Wentz is still going to be there. But I mean, he might play again for the Eagles. What I mean is that he'll never have the locker room, the organization again. Like, he'll play again. I don't think Hurts is going to play well enough to keep a guy making $30+ million on the bench. I mean, he might play fine. Like, I hope he plays well. I'm an Eagles fan.
Yeah.
But I expect it to be he'll play fine, but the money will talk and Wentz will go back to being the starter. But the yo-yo effect is done. It's over. You can't have two quarterbacks. It's not running back. It's not wide receiver. It's not any other position. And once the Eagles did that, they cut his legs out. He hasn't played well. Can't fake like he's played well. He hasn't played well. He's played terribly. Stink, stank, stunk since it's Christmas season. You know, he's very Grinch-like in that way. He hasn't been good, but I can't pretend like they didn't undercut him. They clearly did. And now you have factions in the locker room. The young guys are going to like Hurts. The older veterans who were around for the 11-2 during the Super Bowl year, they're going to like Wentz. And then slowly but surely, those veterans will be gone. It'll be all the young guys, and they all like Hurts, and then it'll be divided another way. It's over. It can't be over now because of the money, but it's been over since April.
Yeah, it's a great point. And, you know, it's what was interesting to me, not that, like you said, the veterans, you expect them to come out for Carson. Carson's been their guy. They've kind of come up together. They won a Super Bowl together. Miles Sanders was a little interesting to me because for a little while I thought Miles Sanders was a guy who was frustrated with Carson, just body language on the field when he drops passes and all that. But he came out today and I thought made a pretty strong statement that he has Carson's back. You know, Carson's his guy. Do you put anything into that, or is that just a guy that knows how to play the media game a little bit?
I put a little bit into it. If he hated him, you'd know. Like, you don't hear Alshon speaking up for Carson Wentz, for example. Haven't heard anything from him, have you? So I think it's clear. Like, if you haven't heard anything from him, Jalen Reagor he didn't say anything positive about Carson, did he? He talked about Hurts and how much he liked him. And then, of course, Alshon is Rager's mentor. So I think there would be something to it. We would know if he couldn't stand him. So I think it's real. I think it's somewhat real, yeah.
And what do you think about, you know, continuing with that? Jason Kelce came out, I thought, with a really bold statement, and not only saying, you know, the O-line's not playing well, the wide receivers aren't playing well, you know, the quarterbacks aren't playing well, but the coaches in front office have been bad too. How much stock do you put in that from a guy who is clearly a locker room and community city favorite in Jason Kelce, and a guy who has the respect of someone like Doug Peterson, someone like Howie Roseman? What do you think that could possibly do within the organization?
Well, I mean, they probably don't like it, but they can't do anything about it. I mean, he's solidified. Like, they can do whatever they want with the quarterback even, but they pull him out, but you can't do anything with him. They don't have an alternative. And he's the only guy who's been there for every game so far. I mean, him and Wentz are the only, up until this point, we're the only guy on the offense. Obviously, Wentz is not going to start the next game, so he's the last man standing. I think they should listen to him. They won't, but they should. The play calling has been terrible. The roster's not good. That's not just Carson Wentz. There's a lot of problems there, and I hope they listen to him. I don't think they will, but they should. What he's speaking is true. Look at that. Look at the receivers right now. Look at the receivers right now. Like, look at the receivers right now. Like, look at the offensive line. Look at the linebackers. We think Singleton can play, but look at the corners. Look at this team stinks. Then you just stick with the Carson Wentz and you go, oh yeah, we benched Carson, problem solved. Like, that might last the game. Like, they'll probably play like their hair's on fire on Sunday. Right. Then go on the road to Arizona. That's a long flight. And you look to your left and you look to your right and you realize, like, either I stink or the person to my left stinks or the person to my right stinks or all of us stink. Like, the roster's not good. So they should listen to him.
You know, it's one of those things where they spend all this money on that defensive line that just doesn't seem to want to play up to that. When you could have maybe spent a little bit of money on, I don't know, a guy like Robbie Anderson, who could have solidified your wide receivers a little bit, right? I mean, like, this is the kind of stuff we talked about all off season. And I got to say, I think this week has been one of the worst weeks for Howie Roseman from a public standpoint since he was put in the closet on the other side of the building by Chip Kelly. When you talk about his own players mentioning the front office, but then Malcolm Jenkins had some scathing words the other day. I mean, basically just came out and said, love Philadelphia, love my teammates. it was the guys that make the decisions that didn't value or respect me. I mean, that is like, I know Jeffrey, I keep joking, like Jeffrey and Howie are like the two best friends that they've ever had. But Jeffrey's got to hear this as the owner of a football team that he wants to be a gold standard. He said that for years. Does that have any pull on him to say, maybe I got to cut ties?
Probably not, because he gets to play GM with Howie. He gets to make picks. He gets to act like he's a GM, like he's a football guy. And he can only do that because Howie's not a football guy. And he won the Super Bowl. So, but we know he's not a football guy. This is how you can tell he's a football guy related to Malcolm Jenkins. So the thinking was they let Jenkins walk because he was a strong leader and they wanted to give the locker room to Carson Wentz. Okay, fine. They did that obviously before the draft. Then you draft in the second round a quarterback who all the whole locker room would know because he finished second in the Heisman. He played at Alabama and Oklahoma. So you said, okay, I'm getting rid of this is the reason he gave. We want to give more leadership to our quarterback. And everybody says, okay, we hate to see Malcolm go, but that makes sense. And then immediately you undercut the, quote, leader by drafting another quarterback. That tells you how he doesn't know what he's doing. That's not a football guy. That's a guy who doesn't understand the dynamics of a locker room or, hell, the dynamics of a workplace. Yeah. But if you fired a worker and said, we're going to make this guy the boss, and then you undercut him and draft and go hire a guy that's going to undermine the new boss, no one would think that's okay. That's what Howie did. That's why, separate from Wentz's bad play, this was built wrong. This was built fundamentally wrong, and I'm upset and I'm passionate about this because I was saying this in April. This doesn't make any sense. No, Tyrone, he's just there to be a backup. He's no threat. Everything's going to be fine. If you don't shut your fool behind up, you look foolish now. Everyone who said that in April looks like a damn fool now. Clearly, they drafted him in the second round to play quarterback. You don't draft somebody in the second round to watch football. You draft them to play football. And once you set that up, you set the chain of events that led to where we are right now. And Howie, Doug, Ed, and Jeffrey, they're responsible for that part. So how it was going to manifest itself could have manifested itself in a lot of ways. Poor play, an injury, a concussion, a turned ankle. It was going to manifest itself in some way, shape, or form. And they did that. So it's a terrible week for him because, one, and the people in the media that wrote it too, oh, it's just a backup. You know, Wentz has been hurt all the time. It's just a backup. Like, now you see that that's not true. Like, and then you see that now you're going to see it on Sunday. We know Malcolm Jenkins is going to make some kind of play that, no disrespect to McLeod, who's had a good year. Jalen Mills is not really a safety. They will say, oh, the Eagles probably could have used him. It's just, you know, that's coming. Like, there's no doubt that that's coming. It's frustrating.
It's extremely frustrating, and this is something that, you know, I've been with you since April on this because it was infuriating to me because it doesn't make any sense why at this point they had finally gotten the Nick Foles monkey off his back. That was finally gone. He played 16 games and he took a team of ShopRite baggers to the playoffs last year with throwing for 4,000 yards, first quarterback in Eagles history to do so. First player in NFL history to throw for 4,000 yards without a 500-yard receiver. And he showed you, I mean, every question or every argument that the Foles people or anybody that didn't want to like Carson Wentz had, he showed you exactly why he was there and exactly why he was your leader. And all they should have done was draft receivers, solidify the offensive line, and make sure he was taken care of. And instead, they draft a quarterback in the second round. I mean, at that point, that's just a giant slap in the face. And I don't care who you are, an aging quarterback like Aaron Rodgers when they took a quarterback in the first round, or a 27-year-old Carson. I don't care who you are. That immediately changes everything going into the season. So what do you think they actually, like, how do they finish this season? What do they do? Do they play well on Sunday? Like, do you think Jalen Hurts can actually accomplish something against this Saints defense? Like, where does this team finish out the season? What do we have any answers?
Well, I actually think they're going to win on Sunday, and that's going to really put the city on fire. I think they're going to upset the Saints. I think people are going to be all over it. Oh man,
I don't know if I can take it.
And it's fine. I think they're going to win on Sunday. I think the defense is actually going to force turnovers. I think that Saints quarterback stinks. I think he's terrible. I don't think he can throw at all. I think he's terrible. I think he's the wrong quarterback playing. I know they paid him and they say he's the heir apparent. Yeah, he can't throw. Like, I don't think he can play. He might run Eagles defense, but I think that they're going to get turnovers. And I think they're actually going to give Miles Sanders 20 carries, which they haven't done up until this point, but they'll do that for him. And I think they'll move the pocket and do things to make things easier for Hurts. And I do think he's a good enough athlete. I think he could develop as a quarterback. And I think they're going to end up winning this game. Now, then going on the road to Arizona after that, different story. But I think they win on Sunday. The city's on fire. This is the future. And then Arizona comes, and it's not such a good deal. That's what I think is going to happen, honestly.
Couple comments from one of our guys here. What's a turnover and what's a Miles Sanders? Because obviously, as you say, we've waited. And that brings me to Doug a little bit. And I've been on the side of, look, I don't mind if Doug's back next year if you have an offensive coordinator. Like, that's kind of where I've been. But every time Doug opens his mouth now or puts out a statement, I go further and further to you know what? Let's just move on because I'm tired of it. So this week, two things really stuck out to me. When he puts out the statement about starting Jalen Hurts, he compares Carson's situation to his own when he came here for Donovan McNabb, which to me is the most ridiculous comparison. Like, I'm an English teacher, and if I ask my students to give me a solid comparison, they would get an F on that comparison because there's nothing about those two situations that are anything alike. Doug came here to play half a season and then give it to Donovan McNabb. That was the role.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That was not what this was. So that just blew my mind. But then when he's asked about what are you going to do for Jalen, how are you going to make him, feel a little bit more comfortable, and he says, well, we're going to establish the running game and we're going to get him out of the pocket and we're going to throw these quick passes so we can get the ball out of his hand. Where has that been for 10, 11 weeks when people have been screaming at you in your press conferences and you give the arrogant, I call it the Chip Kelly-like answer, oh, that's a good idea, I'll look at it. Like, how much of a disconnect does he have right now with his own football team?
Well, I don't think he can be back if Carson Wentz is back. And since Carson Wentz kind of has to be back, that should kind of tell you where it is. It doesn't make any sense. Right. It doesn't make any sense, but it's clear. I'm telling you, since April, it's been very clear that he doesn't know what he's doing. He should have been kicking and screaming because he should be aware that his roster was bad. So in the second round, I don't want a quarterback. I want just about any other position because my roster's bad. This team could have used another running back, could have used another, you name the position. So then when you fast forward to week, if he can't figure that out in an offseason in which there's no pressure and there's nothing but time, you just watch film, you prepare for months and months and months for this draft. And I know that the pandemic or whatever, but no, the draft, there's no day-to-day pressure. You can take your time, you can watch film, you got all these assistants that cut up film for you. And the fact that he couldn't figure it out when he had months and months to think about it tells you that he has no chance of figuring things out when he has days or minutes to figure it out. So I think it's a manifestation of the offseason when he answers these questions because he has seconds to answer the question, even though he should be prepared. But even if they prepared him a couple days in advance, he botched the draft when he had months to prepare. So I think it's at the point where his mind does not operate at the highest of levels. And the fact that he is somehow inflated his former play. He was barely an NFL player. Like, he played in the NFL more than we did, but way less than most people. It's like it's hard to explain. Like you said, you're a teacher. Like, this would be like if I taught like one gym class once, and then I decided that I was a teacher. Like, no, like I guess technically I taught a gym class once and like they ran around through some cones, but like I'm not a teacher. Like, he's barely an NFL quarterback. And he's in there talking like he was Brett Favre. Yeah. Like, he's got to stop that. Like, I don't think he realizes he also played in this city. So all you have to do is Google or have been alive when you saw it. He was barely out there. And to keep citing that over and over again, when you're talking about pedigree guys like the second pick in the draft, a guy that was an MVP candidate, or even Jalen Hurts, a second-round pick who finished second in the Heisman and was at Alabama and Oklahoma, you're not in the same stratosphere as these individuals. You, sir, should shut up about that playing thing. Like, stop doing that. But the fact that he can't figure that out speaks to the part of the problem. And I think that's why the veterans back Wentz, because they hear what he's saying. The young players, they don't have an NFL coach to compare it to. I bet you Fletcher Cox, he came out really strong, for example. I bet you he goes, man, I was drafted in Chip Kelly. I didn't like Chip. This is just as bad.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing that's happening right there week to week. I think he's now having trouble digesting information and giving suitable answers, even though these are questions he should have been aware of. I also think that is why they announced the quarterback situation on Tuesday when he wouldn't have to face the media, so he'd have a day to get ready, and still you had the bad answers.
But even then, I mean, I still don't. I guess that's a good point in why he announced it when he did, but I still don't quite understand the strategy behind announcing it when he did, because he's very typically not going to show his hand, keep everything's very close to the vest. I mean, earlier in the season, he wouldn't even tell us who was playing in what position on the offensive line going into a game, because he doesn't like to show his hand. He doesn't like for anybody to be able to adequately prepare for what he's going to present. So wouldn't it make sense against the number one defense in the NFL to keep that a little bit closer until maybe Friday or Saturday, when they have less time to prepare for what you're going to show out there? Because if you're going to then change everything you've been doing for the entire season, they're not going to be adequately prepared at all. And there's not enough film out there on Jalen Hurts for this Eagles offense to be able to, even for the number one defense, to be as prepared as they would like to be. So do you think he's trying to kind of be like, I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm going to do, and he really believes that Jalen Hurts is going to go out there? And I know you think they're going to win, but do you think he really thinks Jalen Hurts is going to go out there and light the world on fire, and he's going to go, see, I got it?
Yeah, I really think he thinks that. I really do think he thinks that. I think he was also praying for rain. Practice would have came on Wednesday, and the reporters would have seen who was taking the bulk of the snaps, and then they would have been able to infer it. So I think he did it on Tuesday. Also, he has some beef for whatever reason with a lot of the local media, so he leaks it to ESPN so they can make the announcement, and then he can say, see, you guys, if you're a little bit nicer to me, I'd have given you the exclusive. So I think it was a big pissing contest in that way. But I think once he saw that the weather was going to be nice and they couldn't shield the media away, they would have figured it out on Wednesday anyway, because he could say whatever he wants. Oh, we haven't made a decision. But if Hurts is running with the ones more, the reporters are going to write that. Right. So I think he just wanted to stick it to the media, because that's what he is at this point, just like a petty man. But I do think that he really believes that it's all Wentz's fault and he's doing nothing wrong. I truly believe he thinks that.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about him being a petty man, and you mentioned, to me, he's actually worse than Chip Kelly. I said this the other way, because Chip Kelly was just a jerk, and he let you know he was a jerk. Doug tries to play that whole, I'm a nice guy, hey, holy gosh, gee, all that stuff. But he's got the same arrogance issues that Howie has, that Chip had, that a lot of these guys have. And it's like, now, not only are you an arrogant jerk, you're a fraud at that.
Are you ready?
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions.
I was right.
Let's go!
I'm the best.
And here are your hosts, Jessica Town and Rob Landry.
You're a jackass.
Embrace the madness.